Hi, hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Am IMA, a podcast from the Innovation, Methodology and Application theme here at Newcastle University. I'm Andrew Fuller, your host, and today I am really happy to be joined by Eugenie. She is another member of the steering committee for the IMA. Hi, Eugenie. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm all right. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. Thanks very much for joining me today. It's really nice to finally talk to you face to face. Well, screen to screen, we should say, because we're not necessarily face to face. But because you and I have been on the same team in the same theme for a little while now, but I've never actually said hello face to face. So it's nice to finally meet you. Nice to put a face to the name. So yeah, the podcast today, we're just going to talk a little bit about what you do day to day at Newcastle, how you got here, where you started, and we'll touch a little bit on what you're hoping to bring to the theme. I should mention you're the student representative of our theme as well. So we'll try and keep keep students in mind a little bit while we're going through the questions. But if you don't mind, we'll start off a little bit with how you got here today. So you've been at Newcastle. I couldn't find out how long you've been at Newcastle. So when did you arrive? What were you doing beforehand?
Well, I started it in this current phase of working at Newcastle in 2017. I joined as editorial assistant for Cochrane Continents, and because the editorial base is based at the Population Health Sciences Institute in the Baddeley Clark building. So I worked there for a couple of years, and over the course of working on that, started getting more into the methodology of systematic reviews and wanted to find out more about them. And then a opportunity arose very early this year to become a training fellow in evidence synthesis, and I went for it and I got the role. So now I'm working part-time with the evidence synthesis group in the Population Health Sciences Institute, still working with Cochrane Continents as their assistant managing editor, but I'm also studying part-time for an MSc in public health and health services research.
Wow, so quite a few things going on concurrently there. That's
it's quite a lot.
How does that work for you? Is that 3 different separate headspaces? Do they all kind of tie in nicely? Do they kind of all play nicely together?
I think my Cochrane role and my evidence synthesis role are kind of tied together in the sense that they're mostly about systematic reviews, although the evidence synthesis role is a little bit wider. And I still do editorial work for Cochrane as well, and that's a different headspace altogether.
Yeah, I bet.
So that's more on the publishing side. And then my MSc is kind of like getting a grounding and everything, so it's kind of a little bit odd because I'm sort of learning and doing at the same time, so it's like simultaneous. But it's really good because I think I kind of get like the hands-on experience of some of it, and still get to learn about things that maybe I don't normally do in my role as well. So that's really nice.
It's really nice. I've always liked that. The kind of the part-time MSc. I remember I did a year out in industry when I was an undergrad. I won't say how many years ago, but quite a few. And during that time I was working with people, and that was really nice just to get a break from like the pure academia, just, lectures, labs. But even when I was working there were people doing masters whilst having, a part-time employment as well. And it's just great because you get, like you say, it's not like the stuff you learn is not going to apply to what you do on a day-to-day basis, but you'll just be maybe a little bit extra, might be just a little side road that you end up diving down. So it's always been a really good idea, I think, to do that.
Totally. And just in these times as well, it's just nice. We're still like trying to forge a little bit of a community as well. And there is like a really diverse range of people on the course, and it's really nice to get those other perspectives and things too.
Definitely, yeah. So how many people are on the course then?
I'm not sure. I think there's normally about 50 people in our lectures, but I know that's split across I think 3 different courses, but some people, like a lot of the modules overlap.
Right.
So that tends to be how many people are there on a regular basis.
For the quite a decent size then, quite a nice, like quite a big number of you to
I think for the impression I'm getting, it's bigger than most years, but that's okay. It's a good time to get into public health.
Yeah, well, you're definitely not wrong. You're definitely not wrong in that. There's a lot of interest at the moment for obvious reasons. I guess for relevance, this is going to be available for a long time. We're recording this November 2020, so we're still slap bang in the middle of this pandemic, which has obviously impacted everybody. But has that had any acute impacts on your day to day, or is it? I mean, you're unlike so just to put this in context, for me, I have to go into the lab every day, so working from home is an entirely new experience. Not one I've got used to it, but I wasn't very good at it at the start. How's it impacted you?
I've been at home since March, I think, when this pretty much all kicked off properly and we were all sent home effectively. So I've been working from home consistently, and also since October studying from home too. I've had periods of working from home before when I've done like freelance jobs and stuff. So I think I've been quite lucky in the sense that it's almost sort of readapting to that role,
right?
How I used to work, as opposed to going into the office all the time. It has been very different. I think when you work so closely in a team with other people as well, finding ways of getting around that and keeping in contact and stuff has been different. But it's not been too bad. Touch wood.
That's good. Oh, good. I'm glad it's not been. It sounds like you had a bit of a better grounding than I did to deal with it. So that's definitely a positive. So when you were doing, so how did you end up? So you started at the Cochrane in Continence as managing assistant editor. Is that right? Is that where you came into that as, or did you start
editorial assistant?
Editorial assistant. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what were you doing? What were you doing just prior to that? Whereabouts were you? I know you said you were doing freelance. Were you doing writing?
I was
reviewing.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of freelance work. So I was working a little bit in marketing, and I was working a bit in journalism as well. So I've had a lot of experience writing for magazines in the region and around the country as well. So that was pretty much what my roles were at the time. But I'd always been kind of interested in getting into publishing, which is why I'd gone for that role. And yeah, it's worked out quite well.
Yeah, it seems landed on your feet, definitely. So before you were doing freelance, so did you go to university before that? Did you go to undergraduate as well?
Yeah, so I did study at Newcastle. So I studied my undergrad with combined honours in English literature and film studies.
Oh wow.
And then I did a first master's degree, which was in English literature.
Right, okay.
But that was quite a few years ago. I always forget how many, but that might just be conveniently forgetting.
Just don't think about it. It's fine. I still pretend I'm in my 20s in my brain. It's never going to change. Oh, great. So you've been up in the northeast for a little while then, with some gaps moving around. And
I'm from Sunderland, so I haven't flown too far from the nest. I'm very much stuck in the northeast.
Locals don't tend to. I know it's a trope of people who are born and bred around here. They tend to stick close to the families and stuff. That's awesome. So when you came out of your undergraduate and you thought, okay, I'm going to do my master's, was that straight? Was it tacked on to the end? So you finished, you graduated, or was it a combined thing?
It wasn't combined into it, so it wasn't like an integrated thing. Right. I just decided to do it, and I just did it straight after I'd graduated. So it was it was just straight afterwards. So it's basically 4 straight years, but 2 degrees.
And I guess one of the questions I had was when you kind of breaking out, when you finished that master's, did you have like a plan in mind for where you saw? Did you see yourself going to go back into working into universities? Or I know you said you wrote freelance, so you've done some magazine and some all sorts of other things, but I'm just wondering, like, there's a little bit of kind of diversity there in the career. So like, I'm just wondering how you ended up back here, if that was what you foresee happening.
It does seem like quite a deviation in route. But I think because I'd always been interested in the sort of like the writing side and publishing side, I didn't necessarily think I'd be coming back to a university per se, but definitely maybe a publisher, an academic publisher. And when that opportunity came up, it just seemed like a really good fit and a good way to get some more skills like on the publishing side. And then from there, it just kind of found sort of like an enjoyment and a what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of a real interest, I suppose, in getting into science, which it never really occurred to me before.
No,
But yeah, it just kind of happened.
No like science background to it. It's not like you did biology as an undergrad. It's like
no,
really different. It's
no.
great to come back
I'd always been very much in the humanities. So I think when I started moving towards that sort of like methods angle, it was as much a surprise to me as anybody else.
Good. That's good. It's good to keep yourself on your toes. That's
exactly.
That's definitely a good way to do it. Definitely a good way to do it. So if you could talk, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about working at Cochrane and Continents, because it's either the first thing that comes up. Like, all honesty, you just write your name into Google and it's like top of the list. There's I think Newcastle is your first profile, is your first hit, and then the next one is the Cochrane and Continents. So what does your role have you do? Because that's it's a review based journals, right? It's not like you get in original research articles in like your Nature and Science, all that stuff. It's exclusively reviews. But so how does that kind of work? It's a little bit different from what I'm used to, and I just wanted to find a little bit more about it.
I think from the perspective of my role, and certainly where I started with it, it's pretty much we get authors who are interested in doing systematic reviews, and then we kind of help guide them through the process. But we also handle all of the editorial tasks. So when they're submitted to us, we do some like basic checks of like style. We also handle like the peer review process and basically make sure it's ready for publication and that it's up to like the sort of the standards of the handbook by going through those processes.
Okay, so it's so the people who submit an article, also, so those people who are interested in doing a systematic review, do they come and approach you, or do you go and like headhunt certain people? If there's like a field of expertise, do you go and find the right people for it?
We tend to get approached and say, I'm interested in doing a systematic review in something that's related to our scope as a group, because we're one of 50 groups around the world.
Right, okay.
So people tend to approach us, and if it's something that we haven't already done and it fits okay, and it's something that can be answered by a systematic review, particularly of interventions, then we ask them to do a TAC proposal form. They have to do a protocol, and then they can move on to the review. And quite an involved process.
I was going to say that was the first word that was about to come out of my mouth. It sounds really involved. Like you're really early on in the process there, and then all the way through, you're kind of helping people out. That's pretty intense. I imagine it could be pretty intense anyway.
Yeah, and I've moved particularly over the last couple of months as well to being an author on some of them. So I'm on the other side of the fence too for a couple of
oh wow, okay.
Protocols. So I'm currently seeing it from
different type of writing altogether. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very different experience being on the other side of the fence, but it's quite nice because I can kind of adapt that to my editorial role and think, yes, I know what authors are going through. So it's kind of good in that way.
It's one of those things that does being an editor make you a good writer, or it's like being a director and a producer on a film set? They're not always the best things to mix together, but I guess in your case, it's doing your wonders.
I always say to people that it's different when you're writing something, because you want to get the content down, and sometimes it gets to a point where you think to yourself, oh, I just need to make sure that I've got like the actual content right. And I don't really mind if I need to tidy up bits here and there. It's not a big deal. It's a very different sort of job, like looking at someone's like fresh and coming from like the outside almost, as opposed to being really involved in it and writing it. So I think they are two different things. And
yeah, definitely. I've done a little bit of writing in the past, and it's not. I'm useless at editing it. I have a friend, a colleague I work very closely with, who's ruthless and excellent at it, and I always dread handing in work that I've done, because you put loads of time into it, as you say, getting all the content down. You think you've done a good job, and then he'll just cut it to ribbons. He'll make it better, but he'll send it back with so much red marks through it. And it is
really hard to edit your own work, though. Yeah. it's really not easy. So I think that's a common thing.
Yeah, but it should, maybe maybe we can float it to a theme to a steering committee meeting about editing your own, being a good editor instead of being a good writer. I think there's a lot of focus on becoming a better writer. But I think maybe we need a generation of good editors would be better. Maybe that'd be better. So that's really good. So it seems like you're getting like both sides of the curtain there. You're getting you're behind the scenes, obviously a little bit, just prior to publication. Where do the reviews generally get published? Because you're obviously helping prior to getting published, and then they go out to like a normal scientific journal for publication, or do you have
They're
like
all
ones
published on the Cochrane Library.
Right. Okay.
So every Cochrane review and protocol gets published on the Cochrane Library, and yeah, all of our reviews can be found there. So you can search it by topic if you're interested in particular topics, or just put a few keywords in and see what comes up. But yeah, they're all published on there, so it's not a separate thing.
That's awesome. And then you've also, so I guess that's one hat, and then we've got the training fellow hat that goes on for the other parts of the time. I have to admit, like it's a phrase that I've seen come up since I've started this role in the IMA, but the phrase evidence synthesis is something that just that's a new one on me. I've not come across evidence synthesis to me, because to me, I just think like everybody doing research is synthesizing some sort of evidence, but in your field, it will mean something slightly different. I just wondered, could you explain a little bit more about what is meant by evidence synthesis in your field, and how that might differ from the way my silly brain thinks about it?
Yeah, I feel like I might end up doing a really bad job of this, though.
No one will ever know. It's fine. Don't worry. You're still learning. It's fine.
I think from my perspective, it's kind of like bringing evidence together. So whether from like your perspective, you might be doing you are doing like primary research where you're looking into things and writing papers about like tests or trials. Kind of see it as being a little bit further down the line, and we say, okay, we've got like maybe X amount of trials, and we want to know how effective something is over the course of them. And I think that's how I really basically put it in my head. But I think there's lots of different ways of doing it, and lots of like different ways of research that you can do for it as well. So there's scoping reviews, qualitative reviews, and prognostics. So there's a whole sort of like range. And I'm definitely not going to claim to have expertise in any of them.
Not yet.
At least not now.
It's early days. It's very early days. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to me. So in my head, I've always compartmentalized that side of things in my head as meta-analysis. Like, so you would have kind of, like you were saying, basic science research. And then obviously once that's all piled into a big pile, you need somebody else to go in there and do a meta-analysis on the existing data and come up with the new data. And then you could do, meta-analysis on the meta-analysis, and you can keep going as like an infinite kind of recursion until you get one magical answer. Okay, that definitely makes a bit more sense. But so does that put you, what you do now, that kind of puts you, and forgive me if I've interpreted this wrong, kind of an interface between dealing with clinicians on the one hand, you're dealing with members of the general public on the other hand, and you're also dealing with patients as well, patient data, or are you interviewing people? Are you like, you're kind of at a crossroads between a lot of different people here. I'm just wondering how that works for you. Is that fun? Is that something you thought it would happen with a background of writing? How does that work?
I think because I did as well as being an editorial assistant, I did some like more administrative work in the institute as well before it became a training fellow, and I had a bit of an insight into the way some of these larger reports and things worked, and I did have an understanding that they involved lots of different clinicians because you need the clinical perspective, but also patients and the public, because it's good to know how it marries with their experience and maybe what they're looking for.
It's going to be two very different sides of the coin, right? It's and it's
having
worked with clinicians myself, it's like the way they think about it, the way I think about it, the way the patients think about it, it's three very, very different ways of thinking about it.
It's almost like gluing it all together in a way and making sure that all those perspectives come together. At least that's how I see it. And I do find it really interesting to get all those different insights. And as I say, working as an author now on projects with the evidence synthesis group and also with Cochrane. It's really interesting to get the insights of clinicians and patients and having their involvement in
I bet
projects too.
Excellent. And who's I'm not going to put you on the spot as to who's the favorite group to work with. Do they have different challenges, the different groups? Are research scientists the absolute worst? I know we can be terrible people.
Don't feel like there's a fair answer to that one. I'm going to say that I've not worked in this role long enough to make a decision on that.
That is a politically correct answer. It's definitely the right answer to do. Okay, that's excellent. And so I just want to shift, instead of talking about kind of what you do on a day-to-day, I'm just going to focus a little bit on the IMA, given that that's the title of the podcast. So we'll do a little bit of that, because you and I come to the same theme, and I found this talking to the other guys that I've spoken to on this podcast as well, is the thing about the IMA theme is it's attracting lots of different people from all over the university, and everybody with different skill sets and different things that they're putting into the theme. But generally speaking, people want similar things coming back out of it. So obviously you've done a lot of new things this year by the sounds of things, but with a master's and a fellow and writing new reviews and all sorts of different things. And then getting involved with the IMA, that's another new thing on top of that, I'm guessing. So how did it come? How did you hear about it, and what made you want to kind of get involved?
So I think the first I heard about it was when kind of like the themes were being set up almost. I was already working in Population Health Sciences Institute, and there was some talk about who would you associate with the most, and IMA just felt like the most natural fit because of its methodology side. And in terms of like my role on the steering group and how I got into that, kind of like reaches back to when I was doing my undergraduate degree, because I was quite involved with student representation and student committee then. And that's something I carried forward to my first master's degree as well. And I'd always been interested in student engagement, and I was involved in researching, advancing and inspiring student engagement, RAISE, which is like a national organisation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you've mentioned that in some of the meetings we've been having. Yeah, it's really good to, because that's not something that's come across my screen before, so that's really good to bring that up.
Yeah, so my experiences with all of that combined, when the opportunity came up to go for being the student representative for the IMA, I just thought, oh, it's a natural fit. You know, I'm going to be studying again, so I'm going to be a student again, and I just kind of just felt like it was a good opportunity to get back into that sort of sphere, because I'd not had the opportunity to get back into that sort of student representation thing before then.
Right.
Or at least until that opportunity came up. Partly because I wasn't a student, and partly because I hadn't started my course.
It's one of those things, like, because obviously you're both, because you're doing it part-time, your master's, you're simultaneously a student and not a student, which is, I would say is definitely a benefit to doing what you do in the theme, because to have like a foot in both worlds, it's just going to help you both deal with, because everybody else in the theme is not a student to my knowledge. There's not really any other students in the steering committee. So you're going to have to be able to talk to those people, those academics, there's professors, there's doctors, there's all sorts of people in there. And at that point, you're also going to need to have people in your class that you need to speak to. So having those 50 other students from wherever they are in the university all be on your masters, I think that's ideal. It's really nice to have that kind of a good mix. So definitely a good fit for the role. But what do you think? So I'm just trying to think that you obviously got something in mind that you want the students like yourself and like your colleagues on your course and other students around the university to get specifically out of the IMA. And it's not something I've spoken a little bit about it to other people on the podcast, but to you, what do you think is like some key things that you're hoping that students could maybe get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it at least in my mind, I feel like the theme is quite new, so it's quite a good opportunity to be embedded from the start and have like a student representative, and we've got ACRs too on the steering committee, because then it's almost like we can embed some things and make sure that students are not
Not an afterthought. You don't. It's
yeah,
not something.
yeah.
It's not just something else that's happening in the background.
Not intentionally, obviously, like just unintentionally, maybe, and just keeping that at the forefront. And I think at the minute, while we're developing some of our plans, some of our special interest groups and things as well, I think it's just a good opportunity to say, okay, let's not forget about students, particularly
Sure.
postgrad students, but also looking towards undergrad eventually as well. You know, as you say, we've got a massively diverse range of people in our theme, and
We
that
do,
covers
yeah.
so many different student cohorts,
Yeah.
all the way across the university, really, and
Yeah.
catering for everyone's needs as an academic, let alone as student, is gonna, you know, it's gonna require a little bit of thinking. And
Yeah.
think I think from my perspective, I think it's about trying to build that community spirit almost. And, you know, our theme's very much sort of embedded in the idea that we want to build team science
Mhm.
and build a very nurturing community. And I think if it feels like students can be part of that, and that there are opportunities for them to come and just be part of some of the things that we do as a theme, or just be aware of things that we do as a theme,
Definitely.
and that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more about that, especially getting them involved at an early stage of it. Because like you say, it's so easy to, if you're going to think about students, but from my perspective, from what I do, it's so easy to just think about PhD students or just think about master students. But there's 10 times more undergraduates than there are both of those. And really, we should be thinking about all of them. But we do have a kind of a unique challenge as well, because for all the benefits and the positives that we're saying about the IMA, you know, it's wide range. It covers a whole range of topics and creeds and everything else, which means we have students from all of those backgrounds as well. So how do you cater to everybody? And one of the things that I did want to ask you about is, obviously, it sounds like you've got a really great experience of engaging with students. Now, it sounds really easy to just, oh, I can just go out, I can get a load of them together, get this group of students, I'll get their academics, put them in a room, and I'll talk to them about whatever, and they can sit there and listen to me just like they sit there and listen to everybody else, or on a Zoom meeting, listen to everybody else. But actually getting people invested in engaging them into doing something productive, or learning something new, or taking a completely different look at something that they already do, that's a really interesting challenge. And it sounds like something that you'd be like uniquely good at doing. Is that something you've thought about with the theme? About kind of getting, like, being that stepping stone, that like engagement face to the theme, or is that something you'd be interested in? I'm not pitching a job to you. It sounds like more work, right?
I was going to say no pressure.
No pressure, yeah. But yeah, you can talk to students and the rest of us won't have to. No, I'm not saying that. Absolutely not saying that. I'm to give you some context, just to let you think about it. Student engagement, public engagement is a massive part of what I want to do with my job outside of the theme as well. I love speaking. I started a podcast because I like talking to people. No one asked me if I wanted to do this. This is just something I wanted to talk to people. I like talking to people. So like public engagement, student engagement, just, you know, school engagement with kids. I've got 2 young kids and I love talking to them about science and stuff. But it's hard. It's not something that's comes naturally necessarily to everyone. Certainly I find it nice and fun, but not everybody likes standing up in front of big groups of strangers and talking, or meeting people face to face and just having to have a conversation. So I think that's something we definitely need more of in the theme, and we definitely need more of that engagement with students. And we need people like yourself to help us, learn us, teach us how to do it. Definitely.
Teaching might be a bit strong, but maybe
it's no small thing. Like, it's definitely not a small thing, helping people learn to engage.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite, as you say, it is a difficult. I think it is a difficult thing to do, especially, you know, as we've said a good couple of times now, when our theme is so broad and it covers so many disciplines and so many levels of student as well, straight through from undergrad to PhD and everything in between. I think some of the things that I've been doing so far is partly to do with just like, well, let's have some awareness. So making sure that events that we do, or or initiatives that we might have are put out onto, say, like towards postgraduates on emailing lists. And it's a very small thing, but it's, you know, it's still building that awareness. And
if you don't tell them it's happening, they're not going to come. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, and you're doing a lot of great work with Twitter and things as well. So, and that's always a good, it is a good place though. You know,
good fun. It's nice to be on Twitter for my job. It's having tweet that it's addictive, but it is fun.
But it is another way to engage as well. And, you know, I think some of the awareness building at first is going to be really good, but then just making sure again that the opportunities are there. So when we think about setting up SIGs, making sure that we have student representation there that can feed in to different courses maybe, and, you know, across the different methodologies and disciplines that we have. And also like giving a place, I suppose, for students to be able to present their work, and, you know, in a friendly environment, and building that environment of trust and
definitely
community would be really great too.
I couldn't agree more. I actually think, like, for our theme as well, like you keep saying, we've mentioned it a lot of times, but giving people an opportunity to present their work to a completely wide base of people. You know, there's one thing to be given your undergraduate project and to present it to your supervisor and your people on your course, and it's a very, very small, you know, fairly closed room of people. It's another thing to say, okay, well, take all the technical stuff out of it, dumb it right down for me, and come and talk to people who work in a completely different field, because you never know what kind of connections might kind of spawn out of that. And just that practice of talking and presenting to people who have no idea what you're talking about is really, really great practice. And it's a
good skill, regardless of whether you're going to stay in academia or not. It's still a good skill to have. Definitely. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do a little presentation at the Northeast Postgraduate Conference last week. Again, dating this slightly, this podcast.
Yeah, no problem at all.
But it was really great because that conference had such a wide variety of different topics in it, and I was listening and watching presentations about things that I would never normally look at, and it was it was just really great to see the wide breadth of work that people do, and bringing that together. And even if you don't work in it, I think is really nice, because it gives you this opportunity to look a little bit wider, and, as you say, make those connections and network. And it's really great.
I think so. I think that conference specifically is a really wonderful platform, and I know it's. Am I right in is it student organized as well? I think it's student organized.
It is, it's student volunteers,
Yes, which is amazing. That is having organised one small conference, or at least played a part in organising one small conference. It took such a huge amount of work to do that, to get everybody in this place all at the same time and to talk, and everybody, you know, and then somebody handed me a microphone and said, right, you have to compare this. Now, it's not easy. It's definitely, and then to add on top of that, you've got to do this with everybody sat in their living rooms or kitchens like me, and on Zoom, and it's an added layer of complication. So, hats off to them. I'm hopeful that when that comes back around next year, the IMA can have an even bigger role in invest, because I know we've got contacts, yourself and Richie, and have contacts who have a hand in organising that, but not, you don't have a hand in organising, but you were talking at it. So I think getting more representation there and getting the theme, it's a really great opportunity to get postgrads engaged, isn't it? So
definitely
a great role. Well, I think that's just about sorted for time. I think that was a really, really great conversation. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Not a problem.
I'm sure I'll be hearing more from you via the Teams chats. I think there's various strings of those team chats dominated by you and I talking to each other, but it's very, very useful. Is there anything else that you wanted to promote or anything? I think we've got some presentations coming up in the pipeline, but I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll sub in after this. If listeners hold on afterwards, but
I haven't personally got anything to promote, but I would obviously encourage anybody to go to the IMA website and look at the Twitter feed and subscribe. And I would also
research.nco.ac.uk/IMA is our website, and NCO_IMA is our Twitter. So give us a follow, have a look at the website. We do try.
I would just say to anyone as well, like obviously all of our staff profiles are on the IMA website too, and if any students or anyone wants to ask anything or has more questions about just student engagement in general, then just please do get in touch. I'm happy to hear from anyone.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Eugenie. Well, it's lovely to talk to you. Have a great rest of your day. Hope you get out to enjoy the sunshine at some point.
Indeed.
And I'll speak to you really soon. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now. Bye.